AFR On Demand is brought to you by Breck Golf. Try Beaver Creek today, just 20 minutes from downtown Baton Rouge in the Zachary area. They've got a PGA Tour driving range, a short game practice area, 30 to 40-yard practice shots. It's a great place to chip and putt and practice if you don't have time for a full round. Book your tee time today, golf.breck.org, golf.breck.org.
Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Raising Cane studio.
Let's rock!
Hour 2, off we go. Welcome aboard. Glad you're with us. It's AFR. We're presented by Decision Critical Concierge Nursing. Live today from Marucci's Hitter's House. And we're glad to have you hanging out with us. Alondra's on site, Musso and Paulie back in studio. And we're glad to have you hanging out with us wherever you might be. Pop on in, man. Lots of young baseball and softball players coming through to hit the batting cages, take their swings, come shop here in the retail store. Last time I was here, they got awesome LSU merch. I actually grabbed one of the Marucci branded golf shirts, the Dry Fit Moisture Wicking golf shirts with it's like a sort of a lavender, a light purple with the interlocking LSU baseball logo in the left breast. They got awesome gear here, hats, shirts, then of course all your baseball gear as well. So come on, hang out with us here at Marucci Hitter's House. We're glad you are with us as well. All right, it's after further review. Jay Johnson met with reporters earlier in the day on Thursday. Tigers will play a 3-game series this weekend with Dartmouth and Northeastern, so 2 games against each, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and a round robin. Each team will play each, so a good opportunity for LSU to get back at it after having that sort of bad taste in your mouth from Tuesday night's loss against McNeese. And Jay Johnson did give a couple of updates to Kate Arambidi and Chris Stanfield. We'll get to that in just a second, but started off here by talking about what the response has been in practice here the last couple days after the loss on Tuesday to McNeese.
We had a smaller group work day yesterday. I thought it was needed with the volume of games. Travel, all of those things. Today we'll be back together in a little more traditional sense. I thought yesterday was productive in a shorter amount of time for them. Feel like I have a good feel of when that needs to be that way, and I felt like yesterday was that day. And we'll have a good practice, good meeting, get ready to go for 5 games in 6 days.
I understand how odd that is to have that type of cluster of games. Once you get into conference play, you're just seldom going to see a week like that where you're going to play a 5-game week, right? Where you're going to play 2 midweeks and then 3 games over the course of a weekend. More likely what you're going to see is, we know it's going to be 4-game weeks where you play your Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, plus your midweek. So the whole 8 games in 10 days, 5 games in 6 days, 4 games in 5, whatever. That's uncommon, and because that's atypical, you're going to do things that are atypical, especially with your pitching staff. Because when you got to get through 8 games in 10 days, you're going to have to make sure that a lot of guys get a lot of work, so guys have their regular rest and so on. So not a big surprise there. So I guess it's all to say it's not typically how it's going to go. So you're going to see different atypical type rotations and how they use their pitchers throughout the course of this weekend, knowing they got to play 4 games in 4 days. Of greater importance, I think, are the health updates on Chris Stanfield and Kate Arambidi. So Arambidi on Tuesday against McNeese, while he was catching, took a ball off of his foot, took himself out of the game. That's according to Jay, what Jay said in the postgame. Didn't have an update in the postgame. So here 48 hours later, little less than 48 hours later, Jay gave an update on, and was asked about for an update on Kate Arambidi.
Do you have an update on Kate?
Yeah, he's fine. I expect him to play fully tomorrow.
Okay. That's great news. We'll see if it plays out that way. And I hope it is certainly that, and nothing more than just taking the ball off the foot. Needed a day to get off of it, and he's good to go. There's a very obvious reason why that's significant. Remember a year ago, Hernandez emerged as a great veteran player, really a leader on your team, clutch hitter, And while he wasn't a dynamic backstop, it was more still behind the plate receiving. Such a veteran, I think, did a good job managing the pitching staff. Aaron Beatty, super high ceiling, but wasn't really ready a year ago. Hernandez is gone. Now Aaron Beatty's your best option. After Aaron Beatty, you have Omar Cerna, who's a freshman in a similar spot that Aaron Beatty was a year ago. And then you've got Eddie Yaman, who didn't play at all last year. So those are your options. And Aaron Beatty is by a mile your best option. I mean, and I would argue, because I might argue your most irreplaceable option on this team, with total respect to dudes with super high ceilings, and Milam, who's been a 3-year starter, and Curiel and Brown were probably going to be first-round picks. And you've got enough depth everywhere except at catcher. And Aaron Beatty is so far and away your best player. You got to have him healthy, and he's had a fantastic start to this season. We could talk about the defense, of course, which is key, but I mean, even offensively, he's hitting .355. His on-base percentage is .474. He's been outstanding. So when we first learned that he got hurt, my opinion was, man, I don't care if you have to sit him for the next 2 weeks. Sit him for the next 2 weeks just to get him healthy for the start of SEC play. But Jay says he fully expects him to play fully on Friday. Here's hoping that's the case. He also was asked for an update on Chris Stanfield. Here it was.
Progress, advancing what he's doing in practice today. I don't think hitting is on the table this weekend, but my hope is by next weekend that we're back.
Okay, so hitting not on the table this weekend, hopeful to be back next weekend. Again, we'll wait and see. Jay's always core with injuries. Talked about, obviously, gave the example of Gavin Guidry. All throughout last year, at times he even refused to even call Guidry's a back injury before he came out with what it was and was going to require surgery, and they were shutting him down for the year. So we'll see if, in fact, it is next weekend for Stanfield. One more from Jay on why they've sort of been slow with Stanfield coming back.
Pain tolerance. He'll be back in the mix as soon as he's able to play at full strength. And if there's other things we can do before then, without being at full strength, then he'll do those things because he obviously brings a lot to the table.
We'll say it again. I know at the risk of sounding repetitive, but for those who haven't heard it, the great benefit right now of Stanfield being out, I'm not saying Stanfield being out is a benefit, but if you're looking for the positive spin, it's that you're getting Reeves and Simpson an opportunity to play in left. You're getting them game action in games that aren't going to determine your season, but an opportunity to get out there, run around, and play the position and get very meaningful experience. Stanfield, in his career, has played in 172 games with 160 starts. He has 564 career at-bats. I don't care if Chris Stanfield plays against Northeastern and Dartmouth. I don't care if he plays next weekend either. The only thing that I would like to see is Chris Stanfield back and as close to 100% as possible when you open up conference play here in a couple of weekends. So if this is an opportunity to get some other guys playing time and let Stanfield heal, great. Spin it positively how you need to, but Stanfield, they hope, will be back next week. If not, give them another week and target the start of SEC play. So Tigers cruising here through the pre-conference, 4-game weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday for LSU. Aaron Beatty, according to Johnson, should be good to go Friday. Stanfield, probably at least another week, it would seem. All right, y'all, it is after further review. Our Thursday shows are presented by Decision Critical Concierge Nursing. Told you, man, over Christmas, Erica came down with strep throat, oddly, and she was in bed literally for 3 days in bed, and didn't eat or drink much, so called Decision Critical on a Sunday night, and Blazia answered the phone. The owner of the company answered the phone on a Sunday night and scheduled an IV. Nurse came to our home the next day, gave Erica IV hydration fluids, all the stuff to get her, kind of bring her back to life. If it's something like that, or maybe you're having surgery and you need help post-operatively at home, well, the Decision Critical nurses can come in home. They can go with you to your appointment. They can hear your doctor's orders and help execute those doctor's orders in the house to keep you out of the hospital. They're the best. They're all over Louisiana and now in Dallas as well. DecisionCriticalBR.com to schedule that discovery call. DecisionCriticalBR.com. Title sponsor of our Thursday shows. All right, we're glad you're here with us at Marucci Hitter's House. Quick break. Talk a little college football with our buddy John Talty, formerly of AL.com, now with CBS Sports. And then bottom of this hour, I do want to talk about a great former Tiger and now former Saint. Will Clapp is calling it a career. I'll give you some thoughts on that coming up at the bottom of this hour. Don't you move. It's AFR.
AFR.
AFR is brought to you by our friends over at the Watermark in the Renaissance, Watermark Downtown, Renaissance Southtown. Hey, St. Patty's Day is coming up here, the St. Patty's Day Parade in a few weeks. If you're going to be hanging out, maybe a great opportunity, as you've heard me talk about Watermark Baton Rouge for so long, maybe a great opportunity to book a room at Watermark in downtown Baton Rouge. Make a full weekend of the wearing of the Green Parade. Stay downtown at Watermark, dine at the Gregory, maybe walk to some of the local restaurants and bars, see some of the sights in downtown Baton Rouge, maybe gamble a little bit at the casinos, catch the St. Patty's Day Parade there in Mid-City, but make the Watermark Hotel your home base. If it's for a baseball weekend or business, if you're coming in town, maybe you're starting to think ahead already to football season, Baton Rouge's premier hotel property with easy access to LSU is right there downtown. It's Watermark Baton Rouge.
After further review with Matt Moscona, presented by Decision Critical Concierge Nursing. Healthcare for your lifestyle. Learn more at DecisionCriticalBR.com.
Called on John Talty to join us on the show today. He has a piece up at CBS Sports about defining success for first-year coaches in the SEC. But I kind of just want to talk with him about his book that's about to be released. So I'll probably do a little bit of both. John's with us now. Hey, man, how are you?
Good. Appreciate you having me on.
It's our pleasure. All right, I'll get to the football stuff in a second, like the on-field stuff in a second. So you got a book coming out called The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. It's you and Armin Katayan.
Yep.
I think there's a very obvious question as to why you would write the book, because it's the question that everybody wants to know the answer to. So the bigger question is, so what's the answer? So what's the price?
Well, I think it's like, you can look at it a couple ways. It's a financial thing. Obviously, money runs the sport right now. We've seen that, NIL, rev share, all those kind of things. But I also think it's like a psychological thing. It's like, it's the price to be great in college football and what it takes. And what it takes these coaches from a time commitment standpoint and a life standpoint. And so I think, the idea is to try to show people, what it's really like in college football. And, what all these coaches are trying to do to be successful while also dealing with a world which, not a lot of rules and a lot of wildness and, makes for a lot of interesting stories for people like you and me.
How many coaches did you talk to?
Man, that's a good question. A lot. We focused on a few in particular, different programs. We kind of try to follow them. So, there are guys like, Mike Loxley at Maryland, Jed Fish, Saban, Harbaugh, a kind of a mix of different, big names, but also like interesting, situations. So, we wanted to have like the big programs, but also like, a school like Maryland. And it's like, how do you survive and how do you succeed at a school where you're kind of middle of the pack and you don't have the most money and you don't have the prestige and tradition? Like, what are you trying to even do to be successful? So it's kind of a mix of different programs and places.
What surprised you? Last one, then I'll move on. What surprised you throughout the process?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's just interesting hearing what it's really like to be a coach, in this era. And I just, the things that you learn about different coaches that, maybe you didn't know. And I think, everywhere from coaching influence to agent influence, one of the characters we wrote about is, Jimmy Sexton and his influence over the sport and how he kind of rose to power. I thought that was, kind of interesting stuff that I certainly didn't know before we started the process. And so it's just, you just kind of learn, get some time with these people, and you learn things, and you try to tell it in a way that's, interesting. And so I think those are some of the things that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I realized it was released in 2024, so so I'm glad I looked at your Twitter bio, because the book is available now if you want to check it out. The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos, John Talty and Armin Katayan. Hey, you also have a piece up at CBS Sports where you're talking about defining success for first-year college football coaches in 2026. We're here, obviously, in Louisiana, and Lane Kiffin might be the biggest lightning rod in college football. I think that's probably a fair assessment. Is it CFP or bust for Kiffin in year one?
I really think it is. And, I think that's, the fan base, better than anybody. Like, obviously that, they have high expectations. Of course, quite a few of the coaches who have come through there, from Saban to Les to Edo, were able to win national championships. So, it's a program that you can, win big at. But they've made a substantial financial commitment to this roster. I'm actually at the NFL Combine this week in Indy, and LSU's roster has come up with multiple different people that I've talked to from NFL and college level. The guys that they're able to get, the way that they have really gone, all in for this roster for year one for Lane. So all of those different things, plus the fact that Lane built a playoff team, at Ole Miss this past year, I think leads to you expect big things out of year one. And with the talent they've assembled, I do think the expectation is playoff, and I don't think it's an unfair expectation, to be honest.
Yeah, with the investment, that's absolutely true. Well, if you flip it and you look at the other side of the coin with Ole Miss coming off a playoff experience but losing their entire offensive staff, how reasonable do you think Ole Miss fans will be with Pete Golding year one?
It's a great question. We will find out soon. I kind of built in where I was putting together that story a little bit more reasonableness, in part because, he's the first-time head coach. But I think the success he had, in the playoffs raised the bar. I think, as of now, Trinidad Chambliss being able to come back for another year, that raises the bar. So I do think that the expectations will be very high. I think, anything less than 9+ wins will probably lead to disappointment, because you can go back and say, look at the history of Ole Miss and, maybe a lack of success at times. But with what Lane was able to do there, with what Pete was able to do in terms of making a run, it's raised the bar. It's raised the expectations. And so I think he'll get a little bit more leeway than Lane, but I think the fans expect, him to be successful. And it's another place where, they signed one of the top 3 transfer portal classes in college football. They have also invested quite a bit of money into this roster. The expectations are real for year one.
John, when you work on something like this and you talk to folks around the sport, is there a coach that took a job that you think maybe is flying under the radar that might be just the perfect blend of coaching ability, talent, resources, all to surprise some people in year one?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'll stay kind of in the SEC. I do think Alex Golesh has an opportunity to be pretty successful early on. I thought that, with the talent they had last year, that they really underachieved under Hugh Freeze. Now, did they lose some of that? Losing guys like Cam Coleman, does that hurt? Of course. But I feel like with some of the pieces he brought with him from South Florida, knowing his ability as an offensive mind, I think Auburn has a chance to be better than maybe people expect. And if you just look at their recent history, it's been bad. And so even getting to 8-9 wins, I think would be a huge accomplishment, for Auburn. They haven't had that since the Gus Malzahn days, who's now retired, right? So that's one that I think would be interesting. Now, the other one that I think I'm curious to see, Bob Chesney was one of the hottest names in this past cycle. Everybody's kind of looking for their next Curt Cignetti. Obviously, he followed Curt at JMU, had a lot of success. He's going to a place that traditionally has not had the resources necessary. So that's one where I'm he obviously believes that because he could have gone elsewhere too. He obviously believes that there's a path to being successful there. We haven't really seen it in recent years. Chip Kelly had success, certainly. Sean Foster less so. But I'm really interested to see what he's able to do kind of right off the bat, just knowing the success he was able to have with James Madison.
Yeah. Had a great conversation with Bob Chesney when we were at the Bear Bryant Awards in Houston about a month ago. He's He's a leader of men. Easy to see why he might do well out there in Westwood. One more for you, John. John Talty's our guest, CBS Sports at J Talty, if you want to get him on X. The opposite side of that, who do you think among these new coaches might be set up for failure in year one?
I think one of the ones that, I think you have to keep an eye on is Ryan Silverfield at Arkansas. Another guy coming from G5 level was at Memphis. I thought that given the resources that he had at Memphis, probably underachieved maybe slightly. That hire did not go over super well with the fan base, as you know. And I think when that happens, like, it just cranks up the pressure a little bit. Like, it's the opposite for you guys, right? With Lane and LSU, like, people are fired up, they're pumped, that buys you some goodwill. I think with Ryan, like, it cranks up the pressure a little bit, and it's just that's a tough spot. I mean, the SEC is so loaded. There's so much money being spent. Arkansas has kind of been behind the curve when it comes to NIL and rev share in the past. Definitely not one of the highest paid rosters. So I just think he could find himself in a situation where it's going to be just a dogfight to get to 5-6 wins. And even then, that's like, people aren't throwing parties for 5 or 6 wins, right? But that's just to get to 5-6 wins with the roster that they have and what he's kind of coming in is going to be challenging. And so I could see that being a challenging year one for Ryan, and the fan base being a bit upset about it.
John Talty, CBS Sports. Get him at J Talty if you want to give him a follow. Always appreciate the time, man. All the best.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yep, it's our pleasure. And check out the book of The Price. Interesting. He and Armin Katane talk about the price of winning in college football. I'll need to get my hands on that. I'm fascinated by that stuff, as you well know. Hey, we're brought to you by South Point Volkswagen and southpointvw.com. New and certified pre-owned in Baton Rouge and online at southpointvw.com, southpointvw.com. Not far from where we are right now. We're here on Seagan near Airline. I mean, if I went out the parking lot here, took a right to Airline, hang a right just a few miles down the road on the right is South Point Volkswagen. They're Louisiana's largest volume Volkswagen dealer. All the different IIHS top safety picks. It's the highest safety designation. I say it all the time because I see it all the time. I'll never forget, there was Kelly told me this story years ago. She actually showed me the pictures. There was a gentleman who had twin daughters who were high school age, bought him a Volkswagen. It was Thanksgiving Day. They got into a wreck. It was actually on Airline Highway at Highway 42. It was a terrible wreck. And the dad retelling the story, so he drove up, saw the police cars, saw his daughter's vehicle, and thought the worst. And he looked over, and his daughters were just kind of laughing and talking to the state trooper. And he said from then on, he committed he'll always buy Volkswagens because of how safe they are. And so if you're a parent buying that car for your vehicle, or buying that vehicle for your child, or if you are just like me, and I know I put my son in his car seat every day, and my wife leaves our house driving, and we're a Volkswagen family. Style, feel, performance of luxury without the cost, and some of the safest vehicles on the road. Louisiana's largest volume Volkswagen dealer, South Point Volkswagen. What's your direction? One of the interesting ones that John didn't talk about, by the way, first-year coaches, and there's a lot. We focus heavily, obviously, on the SEC, and there's a lot of them. And we didn't talk about John Sumrall or Will Stein. There's a lot of them. The one that I might point out that I think is nationally is set up to fail is Kyle Whittingham. I think we've maybe forgotten how that all went down as the news cycle continues to spin. But, Sharon Moore, was fired and then was arrested. And Kyle Whittingham, who was forced out at Utah, effectively, was sort of a forced retirement, is back in at Michigan. Well, Michigan, you've got this super talented quarterback in Bryce Underwood coming back for his sophomore year, but he wasn't very effective as a freshman. I mean, you could see the raw ability, but he had single-digit touchdowns and almost as many interceptions as he did touchdowns. So I think Kyle Whittingham's walking into a really unenviable situation in what you could argue is the best or deepest conference in America, which over the last 20 years, you haven't been able to argue that. It's been consensus SEC. Well, the Big Ten's now won 3 national championships with 3 different teams, one of them being Michigan without Jim Harbaugh, and a roster that kind of gets depleted. I think Kyle Whittingham is walking into a really tough situation there in Ann Arbor, but long way to go for the season opener. But spring ball getting started around the country, some places here this week. All right, it's After Further Review. Glad you're hanging out with us here. We're at Marucci's Hitter's House. You want to play baseball or softball like the pros, man, you got to come here to Marucci Hitter's House, the official bat of Major League Baseball. It's open daily, 24/7 with member access. Just visit hittershouse.com, hittershouse.com. Hitter's House, train like the pros. Okay, y'all, it is After Further Review. We're glad you're hanging out with us. Let me knock out a quick break. A couple of Saints stories I want to touch on as we hit the halfway point of this Thursday edition of AFR. Will Clapp is calling it a career, and Brian Brzee, might the Saints pick up his fifth-year option? Here's the short answer. Hell no. We'll talk about it anyway. It's next on AFR.
AFR.
Hey, we're brought to you by River City's 1 Hour Air, where they're always on time, or you don't pay a dime. 752-0001, 752-0001, 752-0001, or online at onehourbr.com. Just driving around town, you'll see them. All the yellow vans and trucks with the giant clock on the side. I love their slogan, we're always on time or you don't pay a dime. We're always on time or you don't pay a dime. At their core, they want to save you time and money. If they're a minute late, you don't come out of pocket 1 cent. They save you time and money, and they'll do a great job the first time. One of the things that I love also about River City's 1 Hour Air, when their technician comes to your house to do an inspection, they're not just going to do work or push a service on you. They're going to give you a good, better, and best option and let you decide what fits your budget and how you want to manage your system. It's River City's 1 Hour Air, 752-0001.
After Further Review with Matt Moscona, presented by Decision Critical Concierge Nursing. Healthcare for your lifestyle. Learn more at decisioncriticalbr.com.
You know, I think everybody is going to say the same thing about Will Clapp, but I'll echo it as well, then give you a little anecdote. You probably saw on Wednesday night, Will Clapp announced his retirement, doing so on his social media. And I loved his post because it was a carousel of photos of he and his now wife and his family, starting with when he was in high school with Brother Martin, then through their time at LSU, with the Saints, the Chargers, the Bills, back to the Saints. And you could see the two of them sort of growing together and then having a family now with two children. And I think about Will and his journey being a kid from New Orleans whose dad played, Tommy Clapp played at LSU, grew up. I mean, this is the Louisiana dream story, right? When you're from New Orleans, your dad played at LSU, you grew up loving the Tigers, you get to play for the Tigers. Clapp was two-time All-SEC, redshirted in 2014, then became a 3-year starter. And at both center and guard was All-SEC. Goes into the draft. He's drafted by the Saints. I mean, his hometown team, where his family can watch him play. And as a 7th-round pick, you're hardly guaranteed anything in the NFL. Well, you're hardly guaranteed anything in the NFL, period. But whenever you're a 7th-round pick, you're hardly guaranteed to make the team. I mean, just run through the list of 7th-round picks in the history of the New Orleans Saints. And, yeah, I mean, we could point out sometimes – there's a Marcus Colston, there's a Zach Strief, there's guys who had outstanding careers. But, last year was Maliki Mataval and Fadil Diggs. 2024, Josiah Ezereem was a 7th-round pick. Kawan Baker was a 7th-round pick back in 2021. Tommy Stevens was a 7th-rounder. Alize Mack was a 7th-rounder. Caden Ellis, Will Clapp were 7th-rounders, so that they happen, but not often. Daniel Lasco, Marcus Murphy. I'm looking at Saints 7th-rounders here. Marcel Jones, Greg Romeus, Nate Bussey, Sean Canfield, Adrian Arrington. You get the point, right? Being a 7th-round pick hardly guarantees you anything. Will made the team, and he carved out a career for nearly a decade in the NFL. And after he left the Saints and went to the Chargers, then the Bills, signed back with New Orleans, and, man, he had the Liz Frank injury in the first friggin' preseason game. And I just hated to see it, and especially in a year like this where Eric McCoy got injured. Not that you ever want to see anyone get injured, but Eric McCoy got injured, and it forced New Orleans to play a backup for half the season at center, and that certainly would have been Will Clapp had he been healthy. Instead, of course, the Saints made a trade to bring in a backup center with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But it's hard to be bummed about anything with Clapp's career because, I mean, he's an extreme outlier. A kid from Louisiana, went to LSU, was two-time All-SEC, got to play for the Saints in his hometown, and managed a career that stretched nearly a decade. So congrats to Will Clapp on an amazing run, and certainly on, more importantly, on his growing family, and now getting to focus on that and what's next in his life, which is just awesome. So he'll go be a dad and a husband and whatever's next in life. I told you I was going to share an anecdote about Will, and I know you've probably heard, if you've listened to our station, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge over the years, you know, you've been here for a while. Some of this may resonate. So Will, in a different era of college football, they had sort of like these summer work programs where college athletes in season couldn't have jobs, but in the off season they could. And so a lot of times LSU would ask their corporate partners if they could hire student athletes to work during the summer months, like for football players. So at Guarantee Media, every summer we'd have an LSU football player who worked with us as an intern. Well, I mean, statute of limitations, right? Like, Zach Mettenberger, God bless, showed up the first day to fill out his paperwork, and I never saw him again. I mean, that happens, right? Kevin Minter is one of my favorites, man. I joke sometimes because he would fall asleep in studio. But, man, long days. You know, you're up at 4 a.m., you're doing multiple workouts in class and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes Kev would put his head against that wall, and I just watch his eyes close. He just drift off. Me and Cade Wassian still joke about it. Well, Clapp interned with us, and my favorite story about Clapp interning, and again, like some dudes no-showed, and whatever. When this is old, like I guess sort of old school radio remote audience and information gathering, you'd have people sign up for a contest. Like when they come on site, they'd fill out a form and drop their name in the bucket to win tickets to this or that or whatever. So you'd have these physical strips of paper with name, address, email, phone number, all that stuff. Well, that stuff didn't enter itself into a database. So that felt like good work for an intern. So God bless Cade Wassian assigned Will Clapp, all SEC offensive lineman Will Clapp, to transcribe all these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of contest name entries from these forms, like into a database to like type in their names and address. So we had a database of our listeners and their contact information. And one day I remember Will was up on the fourth floor, and I saw him kind of like in the in what we call Studio 4. It's like a big conference room on the fourth floor. And I saw Will. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? He goes, man, I'm hiding from Mr. Cade. I can't enter any more of these names. He's a great dude, man. And so I've always pulled for Will, and I know we reached out to him and congratulated him on his retirement. We'll have him on the show soon enough when things settle down a bit, but couldn't be more excited for Will Clapp, and a great former Tiger, great former Saint, and what's next in life, cheers to him. I'm sure he's going to be great at it, whatever it is. All right, it's After Further Review. Thanks for hanging out with us here from Marucci Hitter's House on a Thursday edition of AFR, presented by Decision Critical Concierge Nursing. Hey, look, if you're looking for something to do tonight, get by Supper Club. How about it? Don't you love starting the weekend on Thursday? Let's be real, man. Y'all gonna play hooky on Friday, everybody does. People love to start the weekend on a Thursday. So don't go home. It's 4:40 in the afternoon. Don't go home. Call your boo. Tell her, hey, meet me at Supper Club. Y'all, if you don't have a reservation, all right, get online. Maybe they have some. I don't know. Maybe you can log on to supperclubbtr.com, supperclubbtr.com, see if they have a reservation night. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Or just call over there and see if they can get you in. If not, just go to the bar. Open seating at the bar, 14 bar stools, 7 bar tables, always open seating, first come, first serve. So get on by them and just have a cocktail, wait for a table to open up and have your dinner there. Great way to start the weekend. And remember, I know Fridays in Lent, people thinking, I'm not going to do Supper Club because steak, I'm going to just eat seafood. Supper Club's seafood is next level. The Chilean sea bass is unreal. They have scallops. They have Ora King salmon. They have Alaskan king crab legs. It's awesome. It's at Supper Club, supperclubbtr.com, supperclubbtr.com. Again, check them out. Get your reservations today at supperclubbtr.com. All right, y'all, it is After Further Review. Thanks for hanging out with us here on this Thursday edition from Marucci's Hitter's House. Musil do Tigers and the Pros coming up here in just a smidge. We do have a big 5 o'clock hour ahead. Jay Johnson gave an interview with Tiger Rag, and he had a quote about depending on how you interpret it about the future of the LSU program and his future within the LSU program and the administration having to make some decisions, it'll make sense, but I don't want to get to it. But it's illustrative and indicative of the challenge so many athletic departments are facing right now, which is a question to say, how can you be good in everything? I mean, look, it's 4:42 right in 18 minutes from right now. LSU women's basketball is going to tip off against Tennessee on senior night, and they're going to honor Flau'jae and the senior class. Flau'jae won the first women's basketball national championship in LSU history, and the question is, it becomes like, how do you continue to invest in all these things to be good? And Jay's comments were really interesting. I'm going to get to here in less than 20 minutes from right now. Okay. Also, we've got to talk about Derek Carr, who says he's very serious about unretiring. So what are his options? We'll get into that. Could Kyler Murray to the Saints be a possibility? Weird thing, but I'll sort through it. I mean, we've got a ton to do coming up in hour 3, so don't you move. Let me knock out a quick break. Come back. We used to do Tigers and the Pros as we wrap up our second hour from Marucci's Hitter's House here on Segan in Baton Rouge.
AFR.
I want you, if you haven't yet, to log on to yourgoodwood.com for Goodwood Men's Sexual Wellness. And I know sometimes you think, Matt, I don't have ED. Fine, great. I'm very glad that you don't. And if you do, they can help. But that's only a very small part of what they do. Hormone replacement therapy is a big thing, but also peptides. Had someone today on Morning Scone mention that it was a listener who said they're about to have knee replacement surgery. And I said, be praying for you. Hope the surgery goes awesome. You need to look into BPC 157 because that will accelerate your recovery. I'm telling you, peptides are amazing. If you don't know about them, you need to learn about them, educate yourself, and live your fullest, best life, be it for recovery, mental clarity, things like energy levels, cellular optimization. They have so many options. Yourgoodwood.com.
After Further Review with Matt Moscona, presented by Decision Critical Concierge Nursing. Healthcare for your lifestyle. Learn more at decisioncriticalbr.com.
All right, wrapping up hour number 2. Muso, Tigers in the Pros.
Tigers in the Pros. They still bleed purple and gold. They're just really rich now.
All right, we'll start with some news out of the NFL. You might have seen this yesterday evening. The Titans have announced that they have released Lloyd Cushenberry. He was released with a failed physical designation. 28 years old, had 2 years remaining on a 4-year contract. He signed back in the 2024 offseason with the Titans. Of course, was a third-round pick in 2020. Spent his first 4 seasons with Denver. We'll see what's next there for Lloyd Cushenberry. Spring training baseball. Josh Smith got a start at second base for the Rangers today. 1 for 2. Also drew a walk. The one hit was a single. Put Smith up to 375. He's having a sensational start here to spring training. Alex Lang was back on the mound for the Kansas City Royals on Thursday afternoon in need of a bounce back. It was a rough one for Langer earlier this week, and bounce back he got. 1 inning, did not allow a hit, did not allow a run. Lowered that ERA to 5.4 in the spring. Interested to see how his season goes bouncing back from that injury. Cam Sanders. Our first Cam Sanders sighting of the spring with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Of course, remember, they weren't cowards like the Cubs. Acquired him and called him up almost immediately. He threw a shutout inning of relief. Got a hold as well. Issued a walk and 2 hits, but nothing came around to score. Still sporting a shiny 0 ERA here early in the spring. And then Kevin Gausman took the bump in a starting role for the Blue Jays today against the Marlins. Just the 1 inning. It was shut out. Walked 1, pitched around that, though, and struck out the side. So 3 Ks for Gausman, who, was at the front of the rotation for the Blue Jays last year, a team that, was a play away from winning the World Series. And then lastly, Tari Eason in the NBA a night ago, the only Tiger in action. Got the start for the Rockets as per usual. Turned in 21 minutes, 3 of 4 from the floor for 8 points. Also added a couple boards and an assist, and the Rockets got a big win over the Kings. That is Tigers and Pros.
We're presented by Relief Windows and ReliefWindows.com. Energy efficient replacement windows, beautiful entry doors, hardy plank, vinyl siding. They do it all. Oh, yeah, they do shutters too, and now shades. Those beautiful roll-up shades that you can see at the website. Go check it out at ReliefWindows.com, ReliefWindows.com. Remember, when you work with Relief Windows, there's a lot of things that will separate them from any other company. And a lot of things I could talk about. One of those is the fact that they will never take a down payment from you. Literally, people have tried to give them money up front. They won't take it. Brandon will take all of the financial risk up front. He'll buy the windows, door, siding, all of it, install it. Will not take a dollar from you until they're done and you're thrilled. It's Relief Windows. They'll never be the cheapest, ever. You want to go get quotes? Companies say, hey, get quotes, get quotes. You want to go get quotes. If you're just looking for who's going to give you the cheapest price, that will never, ever, ever be Relief Windows. It's not. They can't be. They're a premium product, amazing service. The way that their service after the sale, they actually have a service department. They're not just sending install techs or whatever to go certain. No, they have an actual service department, so they never miss a beat functionally within their organization. They're just the best. It's Relief Windows and ReliefWindows.com. ReliefWindows.com. All right, y'all, it is After Further Review. Wrapping up hour number 2 here of a Thursday edition presented by Decision Critical Concierge Nursing. We are live from Marucci's Hitter's House here on Segan. You want to train like the pros? Come on, hang out with us here at Marucci, the official bat of Major League Baseball. Some sad news from the LSU community today, if you haven't heard yet. Devontae Lee has died. You might remember that name. Prepped at Amite High in Louisiana, went to LSU. Was actually, Devontae Lee changed position several times from offense to defense, and ultimately transferred to Louisiana Tech. And Garland Gillen had a piece up that from a couple of years ago about Lee, who battled cancer and overcame it. There's no official cause of death listed yet from anything that I have seen yet, any of the stories that I've seen yet. But LSU on their official Twitter did put it out, as have others. We have it over at louisianasports.net. He's 27 years old. So certainly sincere condolences to Lee's family, friends, those who knew him well. I can't say that I did. Obviously, I covered those LSU teams that he played for, but I can't say that I knew Devontae Lee well. But nonetheless, it's by literal definition, the word tragedy is when a tragedy involves a death. And so this is a tragic story with a young person, not yet even 30 years old, dying. So may he rest in peace, and condolences to Devontae Lee, his family, and those that knew him well. It is After Further Review. I'll just sort of clumsily move on into what's next here as we come down the stretch here to the end of hour number 2. We are going to talk next hour as well. And this is going to be one of those things. We'll keep an eye on the LSU women's basketball game against Tennessee, which is set to tip here in about 7 minutes from right now on ESPN. So keep an eye on that game as we move throughout the 5 o'clock hour with senior day for Flaugier. But a couple of things that I want to talk about, and I know that I maybe more than most talk about the business of sports and focus on it, but I think it matters so much. It's the cost of winning in college athletics today, and that has never been more complicated than right now. And one of the things that we've seen suggested in sort of the quote-unquote super conference is pooling media rights, meaning, so you understand, like the SEC goes to its media partners, now ESPN, and does a media deal. They get the money and they distribute it evenly among the members. Well, there's a thought of what would it look like if the SEC and the Big Ten joined forces to pool their media rights collectively. It's basically every relevant college football program. I mean, they would monopolize college football more so than they already do if those two pooled their media rights together. Would it be lucrative? Well, one prominent Power 4 booster is speaking out against that and why the math may not math with that. So if you're someone who thinks we're headed for the eventuality of a super conference, the SEC and the Big Ten merging or pooling their media rights, why that may not actually happen that way. And that's an interesting conversation that dovetails in what I want to talk to when we come back after SportsCenter. And that's just these comments Jay Johnson made in an interview that he did with Tiger Rag, where I'm going to warn you, I'm going to read the quotes for you. It might make you a little uneasy because, I want Jay Johnson to be LSU's baseball coach forever. I want him to coach here forever and never leave for another college or for Major League Baseball like Tony Vitello or anything. And I think Jay Johnson sincerely wants that as well. But what he's telling you, what he said in this interview would lead you to believe that while that's what he wants, it may not be his decision. It may ultimately be LSU's decision. I'll explain what I mean when we come back to wrap up when we come back to start hour number 3 here of Thursday edition of AFR.
After further review.
We're brought to you by Lee Michaels Fine Jewelry, lmfj.com, lmfj.com, lmfj.com for Lee Michaels Fine Jewelry. 9 locations in all, 2 in Baton Rouge, Corporate Boulevard in Bocage, then in the Mall of Louisiana, Lafayette, New Orleans, Shreveport, of course online at lmfj.com. If you're thinking of buying that beautiful diamond engagement ring, remember, you're never going to see a lab or man-made diamond at Lee Michaels. You look in the case, every diamond, natural from the finest diamond mines in the world, every single diamond, hand-inspected by a family member before it goes in the case. They are just the best. And they're the best selection, the great Lee Michaels experience, and fair pricing as well for any budget. You go to the box stores, it's going to be cookie cutter. You go to the boutiques, less selection, and you're probably going to overpay. Lee Michaels, just right. Check them out online at lmfj.com.